Marcus Hall had always been a man who believed in fairness and respect. For more than 20 years, he had served his city as the police chief. Every day, he worked to keep the streets safe and the community united. People knew him as calm, wise, and fair. Children waved at him when he passed by, and neighbors often stopped to greet him. Marcus loved his city and the people in it. He knew that every small action could make a big difference, and he tried to lead by example. One evening, Marcus had visited a friend who lived across the city. The day had been long, with meetings about the local youth program and discussions about ways to make neighborhoods safer. His mind was still buzzing with ideas about organizing sports events and community workshops. As he walked back home, rain started to fall softly, drenching the streets and making the pavement shine under the streetlights. Marcus pulled his jacket tighter around himself and enjoyed the quiet sound of the rain. The streets were mostly empty. Most people preferred to stay indoors when it rained. Marcus liked walking in the rain because it gave him time to think. He had just passed a small park where children often played after school. The swings moved slowly in the wind, and the empty benches were wet from the rain. Marcus felt a small smile. He hoped to organize a weekend event in this park to encourage children to play safely and learn teamwork. Suddenly, a sharp sound broke the calm. A car pulled up quickly behind him, its tires splashing water across the sidewalk. Bright flashing lights turned the wet street into a field of blue and red. Marcus froze for a moment, raising his hand slightly. He turned to see two uniformed police officers stepping out of the car, their faces tense and serious. "Stop right there," one officer shouted. Marcus could see the urgency in their eyes. He raised his voice calmly. "I am Chief Marcus Hall. Please wait. I am not a threat." But the officers only saw a man walking alone on a rainy street. His casual jacket and backpack made him look like an ordinary citizen. They did not hear him clearly. Before Marcus could explain further, one officer grabbed his arm roughly, twisting it in a way that made his shoulder ache. The other officer pushed him to the wet pavement. Cold water soaked through his clothes, and the shock of the fall made him wince. Marcus could feel the rain dripping down his face. He remained calm, knowing that reacting with anger could make the situation worse. "Please listen," Marcus said firmly. "I am the police chief of this city. You need to check before acting." But the officers did not seem to hear him. Their eyes were focused on restraining him. They moved quickly, believing that they were handling a suspect. Marcus's badge was in his jacket pocket, hidden from sight, and they had no reason to doubt the identity of the man in front of them. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He had trained for situations like this, though never as the person being restrained. Every second felt long. His heart beat steadily, but he knew that the officers could misinterpret any sudden movement. Rain ran down his face and his jacket was soaked. Despite the discomfort, he kept his voice calm and firm. He slowly reached into his jacket pocket and felt the metal of his badge. Marcus lifted it carefully and held it so that the light from the street lamps reflected off it. The golden badge shone clearly, catching the eyes of both officers. They froze in shock. Their hands paused mid-action, and their expressions changed from tension to confusion. Marcus stayed on the ground for a moment, letting the officers recognize the truth. He did not move abruptly or speak harshly. "I am Chief Marcus Hall. I am here to serve and protect. Please verify my identity before taking any action," he said clearly. His voice was steady, carrying authority without anger. The rain continued to fall softly, making small ripples on the puddles around them. The street was silent except for the sound of water hitting the pavement. Marcus could see the realization slowly spread across the faces of the officers. They understood that they had made a mistake, and they began to step back, their previous confidence replaced by careful attention. Marcus remained on the ground for a few more seconds, ensuring that they calmed down. His mind was already thinking about how to turn this tense moment into a teaching moment for the officers. He wanted them to understand that assumptions could be dangerous and that respect and verification were always important. Finally, Marcus stood up fully, brushing rain from his jacket. His badge was still in hand, shining under the streetlight. He looked at the officers calmly and said, "This is why training, awareness, and communication matter. Always be careful and check before acting." The officers nodded quickly, ashamed but relieved. Marcus smiled slightly and started walking again, knowing that this moment, though stressful, could be turned into a lesson for everyone involved. The rain continued to fall, but Marcus's mind was already moving toward the next day, toward helping the city he loved, and toward teaching others the importance of calm and respect. After the tense moment on the wet street, Marcus continued walking carefully, still feeling the cold water soaking his clothes. The city looked different in the rain. Streetlights reflected off puddles, and the empty sidewalks made the streets feel larger than usual. Marcus's mind was busy thinking about the officer's reaction. Even though he had remained calm, he knew the situation could have turned much worse if he had not had his badge ready. He walked slowly, thinking about the lessons this moment had already given him. Leadership was not only about authority, it was also about staying composed when things went wrong. Marcus had faced many challenging situations in his long career, but being mistaken for a suspect by other officers was something new. He realized that even experienced officers could make mistakes when emotions ran high or when they acted on assumptions. As he passed a small cafe, he noticed a few late-night workers looking out of the windows. Some of them had witnessed the incident from a distance. They whispered among themselves, their eyes wide with surprise. Marcus gave them a small nod, acknowledging them without drawing more attention. He did not want the situation to cause fear or confusion among ordinary citizens. It was important to him that people felt safe and protected. Marcus's shoulder still ached from the fall, and his jacket clung to him as he adjusted his bag. He thought about how easily appearances could be misleading. Even someone like him, a police chief, could be mistaken if the situation was tense and the environment uncertain. He promised himself that he would use this incident as a teaching story, not only for his officers but for the whole community. Understanding and respect were as important as authority. The two officers who had restrained him were still nearby, standing under the dim light of a street lamp. They kept their distance now, speaking quietly to each other. Marcus slowed his pace, giving them time to gather themselves. He could see the mixture of relief and embarrassment on their faces. No one wanted to admit a mistake, especially in front of a colleague. But Marcus knew it was important to approach them calmly and without anger. He stopped for a moment and turned to face them. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice steady and confident. "What happened here is a reminder that assumptions can be dangerous. You acted quickly, thinking you were doing the right thing, but you did not check. Always verify before acting. Respect and patience are important in every situation." The officers nodded, their expressions serious. One of them spoke hesitantly. "Chief, we are very sorry. We didn't know. We thought you were someone else." Marcus looked at him without judgment. He understood. The officers were trained to respond quickly to potential threats. Sometimes speed and caution could clash with careful verification. It was a challenge he knew all too well. Marcus took a deep breath and continued, "I understand your intentions, but intentions are not enough. Actions have consequences. Always remember that, no matter who you are confronting. Even a small mistake can escalate quickly if we are not careful." His words carried weight, and the officers listened closely, realizing the truth in his statement. The rain continued to fall, lighter now, but still steady. Marcus noticed the wet leaves swirling on the pavement, carried by small streams of water. Everything felt slower in the rain, and he used this moment to reflect. Leadership required patience, empathy, and clarity. Acting in haste without understanding could lead to harm, even if no one intended it. One officer asked quietly, "Chief, what should we do now? How do we correct this?" Marcus thought for a moment. First, recognize the mistake. Report it honestly, then learn from it. Mistakes are opportunities to improve. Communicate clearly with each other and with the public. Respect and honesty will always guide you better than fear or assumptions. The officers nodded again, looking more composed. Marcus gave them a small, encouraging smile. He wanted them to understand that mistakes did not define them, but their response to mistakes did. A calm, respectful, and thoughtful approach could prevent similar incidents in the future. Marcus resumed walking toward his home. His clothes were soaked and his shoes squelched with every step, but he did not mind. The incident had reminded him why his work mattered. It was not just about enforcing rules. It was about teaching, guiding, and creating a community where trust and respect could thrive. As he passed the quiet streets, Marcus thought about tomorrow's plans. He would meet with his team to discuss training session. The moment Marcus held his badge in the rain, the world seemed to pause. The two officers froze, their hands hovering uncertainly as they looked at the shining gold in Marcus's hand. Marcus stayed still, his eyes steady and calm, showing no anger or fear. The rain ran down his face and soaked his jacket, but he ignored the discomfort. He knew this was a delicate moment that required patience and authority. One officer blinked rapidly, trying to understand what he was seeing. Chief, is that really you?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. The other officer looked at him and then back at Marcus as if checking to see if he had imagined it. Marcus did not speak immediately. He kept the badge raised, letting it be the proof of his identity. In that pause, he felt the weight of years of service and trust he had built in the city. Finally, Marcus spoke in a calm but firm voice. "Yes, it is me. I am Chief Marcus Hall of this city. Please step back and allow us to speak clearly. I am not a threat." The officers hesitated, still unsure how to respond. Marcus could see the mix of relief, embarrassment, and confusion on their faces. Their training had taught them to act quickly, but now they realized that their actions had been mistaken. Marcus slowly rose from the wet ground, keeping his badge visible. The cold rain clung to him, but he focused on the situation. "You acted with the intention to protect, and I respect that. But intention is not enough. Verification is always important. You must always check before acting, no matter how urgent the situation seems." The officer who had first grabbed him swallowed hard. "Chief, we didn't recognize you. We thought you were a suspect. We were only following procedure." Marcus nodded slightly. He understood. He had been in law enforcement long enough to know that even good officers could make mistakes under pressure. "I know you were following procedure. That is why I am here, not to punish but to teach. We must turn this moment into a lesson." The rain continued to fall softly around them, creating a rhythm that calmed the tension. Marcus noticed the small puddles reflecting the streetlights and the way the wet leaves floated gently along the gutters. He used the moment to show patience. Leadership, he knew, was not about shouting or showing power. It was about guidance, clarity, and example. Marcus placed the badge back on his jacket and looked directly at the officers. "Remember this moment. Never let assumptions guide your actions. Respect the person in front of you, and always verify identity before responding. A mistake can happen in an instant, but its consequences can last far longer. Learn from this so you do not repeat it with someone else." The officers nodded slowly, their embarrassment fading into understanding. Marcus could see they were reflecting on their actions and realizing how easily situations could escalate. One of them finally spoke, his voice quieter and steadier. "Chief, we understand. We will report this honestly and make sure it is used as a training lesson for all of us." Marcus smiled slightly, feeling a sense of relief. He wanted this incident to have a positive outcome. That is the right approach. Every action we take, every decision we make, should teach and guide. Leadership is not only about authority, it is about responsibility, awareness, and the ability to remain calm even in unexpected moments. The rain slowed further, turning into a soft drizzle. Marcus could hear the distant hum of the city, the occasional car passing, and the dripping water from nearby rooftops. The officers began to relax, taking a few steps back and nodding in respect. Marcus knew this was the turning point. They had moved from fear and tension to understanding and reflection. Marcus decided to speak further, emphasizing the importance of communication. You must talk to each other even in tense moments. Ask questions, verify, and remain calm. Fear and assumption can make even trained officers make mistakes, but awareness, patience, and respect will guide you correctly every time. The two officers listened carefully, realizing the truth in his words. They understood that Marcus was not scolding them angrily, but teaching with experience and authority. Marcus wanted them to carry this lesson forward, not as shame but as guidance for future situations. Finally, Marcus lowered his badge and gestured toward the street. Now let us part ways peacefully, learn from today, and continue your work with awareness. You have the potential to serve the community well, but only if you act wisely and with respect. The officers nodded, this time with clear understanding and respect. Marcus turned and began walking toward his home. The cold rain no longer felt uncomfortable. It felt like a reminder of the moment's importance. He had shown that calmness, authority, and respect could resolve even the most tense situations. As he walked, Marcus thought about the lesson he would share with his entire team the next day. The incident would be a story for all officers about patience, verification, and leadership. He knew that teaching through example was always more powerful than teaching through criticism. Tonight had been difficult, but it had also been a reminder of the power of composure and careful action. By the time Marcus reached the corner near his home, the rain had nearly stopped. Streetlights reflected softly on the wet pavement. Marcus felt a quiet pride knowing that even in a stressful and unexpected moment, he had remained calm, guided others correctly, and turned a tense situation into a lesson of understanding and respect. Marcus walked slowly down the quiet street, the rain now a soft drizzle that left everything shining under the streetlights. He could feel the water on his jacket and the chill in the air, but he did not mind. His mind was focused on the lesson he had just shared with the officers. Even though the incident had been tense, it had already become a meaningful opportunity to teach about awareness, patience, and respect. The two officers lingered behind him, unsure whether to follow or stay back. Marcus stopped and turned toward them, raising a hand to signal that he wanted them to listen. "I am not angry," he said in a calm voice. "I want you to understand what just happened and why it is important. You reacted quickly, as you were trained to do. That is good. But reacting quickly without verifying identity can create problems. Always remember to check before taking action." The officers nodded, their faces serious. Marcus could see the mix of relief and shame on their faces. They had realized their mistake, and now they were beginning to understand how serious it could have been. Marcus's calm voice and steady presence were helping them process the event without fear or panic. He gestured toward the empty street. "Look around you. The city may seem calm now, but we never know what could happen in an instant. That is why it is important to stay aware, communicate clearly, and act responsibly. Authority is not just a badge. It is the wisdom to use that authority correctly." The first officer spoke quietly. "Chief, we understand, but we were only trying to protect the public." "We did not mean any harm," Marcus nodded. "I know," he said. "Your intentions were good, and that is why you must learn from this. Good intentions alone are not enough. Actions have consequences, and even a small mistake can affect many people. That is why awareness and verification are essential." He took a deep breath, feeling the cold rain on his face, and continued. "Leadership is about teaching, guiding, and making decisions carefully. It is about patience even when emotions run high. You must remain calm and think clearly, because fear or assumption can make even the best trained officer make mistakes." The second officer looked at him and asked, "Chief, how can we prevent this from happening again?" Marcus smiled gently. "You must communicate with each other and with the public. Ask questions, verify information, and never assume. Listen carefully, observe carefully, and act carefully. Respect every person you encounter because respect is the foundation of trust." Marcus could see that the officers were reflecting deeply on his words. He knew that teaching through experience was more powerful than teaching through lectures alone. Tonight had been unexpected, but it was a real-life lesson that would stay with them longer than any classroom training. He continued walking, keeping the officers in view but allowing them space to process everything. The wet pavement reflected the streetlights, and the quiet city seemed to pause as they absorbed the lesson. Marcus felt a sense of calm satisfaction. He had handled the situation without anger or aggression, and the officers were learning from it. "Remember," Marcus said, "every action you take must be thoughtful. Do not let fear guide you. Do not let assumptions guide you. Authority without awareness is dangerous, but awareness with respect can prevent harm and build trust." The officers nodded, clearly understanding the importance of his words. Marcus knew that they would carry this lesson into their work, and he hoped it would make them better officers and better members of the community. Leadership, he thought, was about creating more leaders, not just enforcing rules. Marcus finally reached a small bench near the street corner and sat down for a moment, letting the rain wash away some of the tension from the night. The officers stood nearby, giving him space but still listening. Marcus used this pause to reflect on the event. Mistakes could happen to anyone, but how one handled the mistake defined true professionalism and character. After a few moments, Marcus stood and addressed them one last time. "Take this incident seriously, but do not fear it. Learn from it, and let it guide your actions in the future. Every moment is an opportunity to..." The next morning, Marcus woke early. The rain had stopped, leaving the city fresh and sparkling under the morning sun. Birds chirped in the trees and the streets glistened with drops of water. Marcus felt a quiet determination as he prepared for the day. The events of the previous night weighed on his mind, but he also saw them as a chance to teach and inspire. He knew that a single incident could become a lesson for many, and he intended to make the most of it. After a quick breakfast, Marcus headed to the police station. His jacket was dry and his badge gleamed on his chest. As he walked through the hallways of the station, officers greeted him politely, unaware of the full story of last night. Marcus smiled at them, appreciating their respect and attention. Today, he would share the lesson of awareness, verification, and calm leadership with the entire department. He gathered the officers in the main conference room. Some looked curious, while others seemed unaware of the serious lesson about to unfold. Marcus began calmly. Last night, an important event happened on our city streets. It reminded me, and it will remind all of you, why patience, respect, and verification are so important in our work. Marcus told the story carefully, describing how he had been walking home in the rain, and how 2 officers had mistaken him for a suspect. He explained how quickly the situation had escalated, and how he had used his badge and calm presence to stop it from becoming worse. The officers listened intently, some leaning forward in their chairs, realizing how easily mistakes could happen even to the most trained professionals. He paused and looked around the room. Mistakes happen. That is part of life. But how we respond to mistakes is what defines us as officers. Respect, patience, and awareness are the tools that keep our community safe and our team strong. You must always verify before acting. You must communicate clearly with each other. And you must remain calm, even when situations seem urgent or dangerous. One young officer raised his hand. "Chief, what should we do if we face a similar situation in the future? How can we act quickly but still be careful?" Marcus nodded, appreciating the question. "You act with awareness. Observe carefully before taking action. Listen to what people are saying. If something seems unusual, take a moment to confirm it. Acting quickly is important, but acting without verification can create problems. Every action you take carries responsibility." He walked slowly among the officers, making eye contact with each of them. Leadership is not just about authority. It is about teaching and guiding. It is about creating an environment where everyone respects each other and the people we serve. You must remember that our actions represent the entire department, and the public trusts us to act wisely. Marcus continued, describing the emotions he had seen on the officers' faces the previous night. He spoke about fear, embarrassment, and relief, explaining that every feeling is natural, but we must use those feelings to learn, not to judge. We are human and we all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after a mistake happens. We must reflect, learn, and improve. He then shared practical steps the officers could take to prevent similar mistakes. Always communicate with each other, even in tense situations. Ask questions. Confirm identities. Stay calm and think clearly. And remember that respect for every person you encounter is the foundation of trust. Trust is what keeps our city safe and our team united. Marcus could see that the officers were absorbing his words. Their faces showed understanding and commitment. He smiled slightly, feeling confident that this story would stay with them. This was more than a lecture. It was a real-life example that demonstrated the importance of calm leadership and careful action. Before ending the session, Marcus emphasized the larger lesson. This city depends on us not only to enforce the law, but also to act wisely and with integrity. Every decision we make affects the people we serve and the team we work with. Leadership is about action and example. You set the standard for those around you. Use every moment as an opportunity to guide and protect. The officers nodded, some taking notes, others quietly reflecting. Marcus felt a deep sense of pride in his team. He knew that moments like these could strengthen the entire department and make the city safer. Mistakes were inevitable, but learning from them and teaching others was what created strong leadership. Finally, Marcus concluded, "Remember the lesson of last night. Patience, awareness, respect, and calm action are your most important tools. Keep them close in every situation, and know that our actions, guided by these values, build trust in our community and pride in our team." As the officers left the room, many spoke quietly to each other, discussing the story and the lessons it held. Marcus watched them with satisfaction. He knew that this story would stay with them for years. He had turned a tense and unexpected incident into a lasting lesson for everyone in the department. Later, as Marcus returned to his office, he looked out the window at the city streets below. The sun reflected off the wet pavement and the city seemed calm and peaceful. He felt proud knowing that he had used the experience not for anger, but for learning and teaching. Tonight he thought he would rest well, knowing that the city was safer, the officers wiser, and the values of leadership stronger. The next day, Marcus returned to the streets of the city with a sense of purpose. The morning air was crisp and the sun reflected softly on the sidewalks. After last night's incident, he felt that it was important to continue teaching by example, not only within the police station but also throughout the neighborhoods he served. Marcus knew that leadership extended beyond meetings and lectures. It was about presence, action, and careful guidance. He walked slowly, observing the city waking up. Shopkeepers were opening their stores, children were walking to school, and neighbors were greeting each other. Marcus noticed small details. The way the streets were clean, the way people smiled and nodded at each other. He realized that every officer's actions, positive or negative, affected this environment. Leadership was not only about authority, it was about creating trust and safety in every corner of the community. Marcus soon encountered the two officers from the previous night. They were patrolling nearby and waved hesitantly at him. Marcus nodded back, a small smile on his face. He could tell they were reflecting on his words and thinking about their own responsibilities. He approached them slowly. "Good morning," he said warmly. "How are you feeling after last night?" The first officer looked thoughtful. "Chief, we've been talking about what you said. We understand the lesson. We want to do better and make sure this does not happen again." Marcus nodded. "That is good to hear. Awareness, verification, and respect must guide every action you take. Remember that our goal is to protect and guide, not only enforce. Trust is built with careful action, not assumptions." Marcus decided to take this moment further. "Let's walk through the neighborhood together. I want you to observe and think about how your actions affect the community. Notice how people interact, how you respond, and how respect and communication make a difference." The officers followed him, attentive and reflective. As they walked, Marcus pointed out small examples. "See the children playing by the park? Smile, greet them, and be polite. You are a role model. The way you treat people shapes their view of law enforcement. Respect here builds trust there. Simple actions create strong communities." The officers nodded, realizing that every small interaction mattered. They approached a street corner where an elderly man was struggling to carry groceries. Marcus stopped and offered assistance. The officers quickly joined in, helping carry the bag safely to the man's doorstep. "This is what I mean," Marcus explained. "Actions guided by awareness and care build trust. Authority alone is not enough. The community notices these small gestures and respect grows." The officers looked inspired. They understood that leadership included empathy, presence, and awareness. Marcus continued walking, guiding them to observe traffic, pedestrians, and small neighborhood interactions. Every action, he explained, was a chance to teach, to protect, and to build confidence. Later, they came across a minor dispute between two neighbors about a misplaced bicycle. Marcus approached calmly. He listened carefully to both sides before speaking. "Gentlemen, let's talk and understand each other. There is always a solution when we communicate respectfully." He mediated the discussion patiently, and the neighbors resolved the issue with understanding and smiles. The officers watched silently, impressed. Marcus said, "See how calm communication prevents escalation? This is the lesson you must remember in every situation. Verification, patience, and respect guide your actions better than anger or assumption." As the morning progressed, Marcus led them to several more situations, each providing a chance to observe, communicate, and act thoughtfully. Whether it was assisting a lost child, directing traffic safely, or calming a worried citizen, he emphasized careful attention and respectful interaction. The officers began to notice a change in themselves. They were calmer, more observant, and more confident in handling situations without rushing or assuming. By midday, Marcus gathered the officers at a small park. He spoke again, summarizing the morning's lessons. "Leadership is more than a title. It is an ongoing responsibility to teach, guide, and act with awareness. Your actions shape trust, safety, and respect." The days following the incident became an important turning point for Marcus and his team. The story of what had happened spread quietly through the police department, not as gossip, but as an example of learning and leadership. Officers spoke among themselves about the importance of awareness, verification, and calm action. Marcus could see that the lesson was taking root. It was not just about what had happened on the rainy street. It was about how they could all grow as officers and as people. Marcus continued his routine, walking through the neighborhoods, checking in with officers on patrol, and observing interactions with citizens. He noticed small but meaningful changes. Officers who had once acted quickly without thought now paused to assess situations. They greeted people politely, asked questions before assuming, and treated everyone with care. Marcus felt proud of the small but significant progress. Leadership, he thought, was about influencing others to act with integrity and awareness. One morning, Marcus visited a busy market area where vendors and citizens interacted constantly. He noticed two officers assisting a young girl who had dropped her school books. They bent down to help her pick them up, speaking kindly and reassuringly. Marcus stopped and watched, a small smile forming on his face. This was the lesson in action. Respect, awareness, and calm action were spreading naturally through the department. Marcus approached the officers. "I see how carefully you handled that situation," he said. "Notice how your words, your actions, and your presence affect the people around you. Trust is built this way. Authority alone does not create respect. Awareness, patience, and kindness create trust that lasts." The officers nodded, understanding that this was more than routine guidance. It was a philosophy that shaped the way they would act in every encounter. Later that day, Marcus held a short briefing at the station. Officers gathered around, eager to hear his thoughts and observations. He shared stories from the previous days, highlighting moments when officers had acted with awareness and calm. "Every action counts," Marcus said. "Even a small gesture can strengthen trust. The way you approach people, the patience you show, and the respect you give create safety and understanding in our city." He also reminded them of last night's incident with the two officers on the rainy street. "Mistakes happen. That is normal," he said. "But what matters is how we respond. We reflect, we learn, and we teach others. That is how we grow stronger, both as individuals and as a team." The officers listened closely, knowing that Marcus spoke from experience. His words were not abstract. They were grounded in real events that demonstrated the importance of calm leadership. Marcus decided to take the officers into the field for practical experience. They walked through neighborhoods together, observing traffic, listening to citizens, and handling minor issues calmly. They assisted a delivery worker who had lost his way, helped a small child reunite with her parents, and mediated a disagreement between neighbors. Each situation provided an opportunity to practice the lessons Marcus had shared: awareness, verification, calmness, and respect. As the day progressed, Marcus saw the officers grow more confident. They no longer rushed into situations without thinking. They asked questions, observed carefully, and acted respectfully. Marcus realized that the incident from the rainy night had become more than just a story. It had become a foundation for the department's culture. Leadership, he thought, was not about commanding authority. It was about guiding others to act thoughtfully and responsibly. By late afternoon, Marcus and the officers returned to the station. The city felt calmer, and the officers seemed more confident and attentive. Marcus gathered them for a final discussion. "Remember that every action you take matters," he said. "You are not just enforcing rules, you are shaping the way our community sees us. Patience, respect, awareness, and calm action will guide you better than assumptions or fear. Lead by example, and your example will guide others." The officers nodded, clearly understanding the depth of his message. Marcus felt a sense of pride in his team. He knew that leadership was a continuous effort, but today had shown him that progress was possible. The incident on the rainy street had been a challenge, but it had become a turning point. As Marcus walked home that evening, the sun set behind the buildings, casting a golden light on the streets. He reflected on the week's events and felt satisfaction. The city was safer, the officers were wiser, and the lessons of respect and awareness were spreading. Leadership, he thought, was about teaching, guiding, and setting an example. Every moment, every action mattered. Marcus paused for a moment at the corner of his street, looking back at the city. The memories of the rainy night were still fresh, but he saw how far things had come. The officers who had once acted hastily were now more thoughtful, more aware, and more respectful. The community would notice the difference. Marcus smiled, knowing that even small steps could lead to lasting change. He entered his home feeling calm and accomplished. The city was quiet, the lights of the streets glowing softly. Leadership, Marcus knew, was not about power or control. It was about presence, guidance, and constant effort to build trust. Tonight he would rest, confident that the lessons of awareness, respect, and calm action were taking root, creating a safer and stronger community for everyone. The week after the rainy night passed with calm and purpose. Marcus continued his daily routine of walking through neighborhoods, meeting officers on patrol, and observing how the city interacted with law enforcement. He could see a difference in the officers' behavior. They were calmer, more aware, and more thoughtful in every action they took. Marcus felt a quiet pride knowing that the lessons of awareness, respect, and calm action were spreading naturally through the department. One morning, Marcus visited a small community center where children often came to play and learn. He watched two officers who had once rushed into situations without thought carefully guide a group of children through a simple safety exercise. They spoke kindly, listened patiently, and demonstrated every step with care. Marcus smiled as he observed them. This was the proof of lasting change. Leadership, he thought, was not just about words. It was about action, example, and influence. Later, Marcus returned to the streets he had walked the night of the incident. The rainy streets were now dry, and sunlight reflected off the buildings, creating a peaceful atmosphere. He paused for a moment thinking about what had happened. He remembered the tension, the surprise, and the lessons that followed. The incident had been unexpected, challenging, and even stressful, but it had become a turning point for the officers, for him, and for the community. As he walked, citizens greeted him warmly. Children waved, neighbors nodded, and shopkeepers smiled. Marcus noticed that the interactions between officers and citizens were more respectful and attentive than before. Officers were listening, observing, and acting with awareness. The community's trust in the police had strengthened, not because of authority alone, but because of the care, respect, and guidance that Marcus had emphasized. Marcus stopped to speak with the two officers from the rainy night. They were patrolling a quiet street corner and smiled when they saw him. "Good morning, Chief," one said. "We've been applying what you taught us. We feel more confident and able to handle situations calmly and safely." Marcus nodded, proud of their progress. "That is excellent. Remember, trust is built through patience, awareness, and careful action. Every choice you make reflects not just on you, but on the entire department." He spent the rest of the day visiting neighborhoods, checking in with officers, and observing interactions. Everywhere he looked, he saw small signs of change. Officers were using their words carefully, listening attentively, and responding thoughtfully. Citizens were more relaxed, engaging openly and trusting the officers' guidance. Marcus realized that the lesson from the rainy night had created a ripple effect that was spreading throughout the city. In the afternoon, Marcus returned to the police station for a briefing with his team. He reminded them of the importance of leadership by example. "Every action, every word, and every decision matters," he said. "Patience, respect, and awareness are the foundation of trust. Authority is meaningless without these values. The work we do shapes the city, and our behavior shapes the way people see us." He encouraged officers to share their experiences with each other and to reflect on the lessons they had learned. "Teach one another through example," Marcus said. "Observe, listen, and guide. Mistakes will happen, but they are opportunities to grow stronger as a team and as individuals. The goal is not perfection, but improvement, understanding, and the building of trust." After the meeting, Marcus walked through the city streets one last time that day. The sun was setting, casting a golden light on the sidewalks and buildings. The city felt calm, safe, and vibrant. Marcus knew that the lessons of the past week were making a real difference. Officers were wiser, citizens were more trusting, and the community was stronger. The incident from the rainy night had become more than a story. It had become a foundation for lasting growth and understanding. As Marcus reached his home, he paused at the doorstep, looking back at the city he had spent so many years serving. The streets were quiet. The lights reflected gently on the pavement, and the city felt alive with trust.